European Cup 3,000 metres title. There's the lineup. Pancorbo of Spain is the new European record holder. Just last year he ran to 7:31. Incredible running, but a time that Dieter Baumann almost reached as well. And the German there, former Olympic champion at 5,000 metres, was raced very, very sparingly this year indeed. Has only had one race, and that was a 3,000 at Arnsberg, where he looked pretty useful a couple of weeks ago. We'll be looking for a victory here, yet another victory I should say, in European Cup competition. Tony Whiteman runs for Great Britain here. Bayard runs for France, the 34-year-old Moroccan. There's Whiteman, 3:32 man for 1,500 metres. That of course is number one event, and Steve made reference earlier to the selection dilemma between Mayock and Whiteman as to who should run the 1,500 and who the 3,000. Whiteman certainly feeling that it would have been better if he'd run the 15, and Mayock would be better suited to this distance, the 3,000, the full 7.5 laps of the track, which Tony Whiteman might not be too fond of. His personal best is only 7:57. That was actually in this race last year. And he finished only down in 5th place. I know, speaking to his coach Alan Story this week, that Whiteman's been putting in plenty of hard work, some under-distance work as well, with races at 800 and 1,000. We'll be hoping that this one isn't too fast, but Baumann and Pancorbo there in 1st and 2nd, with Bayard, the Frenchman, in 3rd, have gone off very quickly indeed. And this is exactly what Tony Whiteman doesn't want. The last thing his coach said he wanted earlier in the week to me was somebody going off at around 7:30, 7:40 pace, with Tony struggling to stay with it, and that he would have to run at an optimum pace for himself, which at the very best would be around 7:45, 7:46. And Steve, single file there. Baumann is steaming along down the back straight. It'll be interesting to see what the 400 metres time is, but I wonder if Baumann is well aware that Whiteman has been running pretty good races over 800 and 1,000.
Well, Baumann is in very good shape, and you can just tell by looking at him, and he's very determined here. He's set off. Probably doesn't mean that much to him whether he runs 61, 62, 63, just full of beans at the minute. He's just having a little look behind him, but he's decimating the people behind him. If he keep this sort of pace going, they're going to be running a very, very fast time indeed, which is why Tony Whiteman is where he is, a little bit far back. I'm sure the team members watching, and indeed his supporters, because that's a huge gap already. But he'll be hoping to pick some of those off, the ones who've gone off too hard, get sucked into going with Baumann. Pancorbo, well, that's a bit silly, isn't it? He wants to keep the pace going as well.
It almost makes you wonder whether or not they've had a word with each other, doesn't it? Baumann 61.1 for the first lap. They're coming up to 800 metres now, and the Spaniard doing his share on this second lap. Well, the clock not stopping, but it was around 2:1, 2:1.5, and Bayard has gone with them. We know he's not in superb shape, Bayard. He ran 13:21 for 5,000 a couple of weeks back, and indeed the Czech there in 4th place, Jana Pešavy, who's only a 7:52 man, will be hoping that this is a bluff from the Spaniard and the German, and that it will slow down to something more civilized. Indeed, the Finn there, Samueli Vasala, whose father won the Olympic 1,500 title back in 1972 in Munich. Pekka Vasala clinging on to the back of the quartet, and these 5 strung out way, way ahead of the rest of the field. Certainly, surely can't keep up this pace.
2:32 through the first kilometre. Tony Whiteman must be wondering what on earth is going on, and it's going to be difficult for him, because it's okay setting off at your own pace and running a more sensible pace, but when the gap gets that big, you tend to want to panic, and it's going to be difficult for him to close that gap unless these men slow down significantly, because he's going to have to work anyway. It's not easy running it if he's going to run inside the best that he has already. He's a lot better than 7:57. We all know that, and we can hope that he's going to have the sort of year that he had last year, and he will run much faster than that. But this is not the sort of thing that he wants to see. That gap is getting bigger and bigger, and at the minute, at the front, Baumann shows no signs of wanting to slow down.
Well, there's 2 possible scenarios here, Steve. I said that maybe he and Pancorbo had a chat with each other. I doubt it somehow. They're both very, very much right up there in the elite of world 3,000, 5,000 metre running. And I think Baumann maybe was trying to call the bluff of everybody here, and has found that it hasn't really worked, that Pancorbo could go with him through the first mile, and so could 1 or 2 other people. Baumann may not even know who they are at the moment. but having sacrificed himself over this first 3 laps to some extent, he hasn't got what he might have expected, and that would be a 30-40 metre gap over the rest of the field. So they go through 4 laps in 4.6. They're still on around 7.35, 7.40 pace. Tony Whiteman back there with Drigan, the Russian, is on around 7.50 pace, which is not hanging about. As you said, you still have to work at that tempo. And it just looks there as though maybe Baumann is easing off. He's moved outside, he glanced round at Pancorbo. Yeah, look at this. The pace has slowed right down. They're watching each other. They've all decided, well, that tactic isn't going to work. At least Pancorbo and Baumann have. And it's beginning to pack up again. They're bunching up again. The Finn is on the back of the group. And they go through with 3 laps to go, Steve. And Whiteman, well, he's closing on them, look.
Well, obviously the fact that the group starts to slow and Tony's kept his pace going now means he's going to have some encouragement, because now the gap starts to close, and then you start to think, hey, well, maybe I can pick some of these guys off. Vasala's managed to get back on that group as well, because he was being dropped. I just find this really odd, because Baumann is such a good finisher, as to why he would want to do the sort of thing we've seen him do, 4 or 5 first laps. 4 laps or so at that sort of pace. You're probably right, maybe he thought he was just going to run away from everybody. And we can see there a 69 lap there. That really is slow. And Whiteman now really is back in the race. It just really remains to be seen how much he's taken out of himself to get back to this group, and how much the others have eased off and now feel fresh again.
Well, you can see what Baumann's tried to do. First kilometre of 2:32 was an attempt to get away. That second kilometre of 2:42 was an acknowledgement of the fact that it hasn't worked. Now Pešavy goes to the front with just 2 laps to run, and there's 6 men still in this one. Vasala beginning to drop off the back with those 5 in front. Tony Whiteman, great to see him tucked in there behind little Bayard of France, who's in 4th. And they're beginning to get closer and closer to Tony Whiteman's territory, and maybe he is just one person that Baumann was a little bit wary of. Pancorbo, very, very quick finisher. He was one of the Spanish trio that fell victim to John Mayock in Valencia. But with 600 metres to run, Tony Whiteman very much back in this race when he looked dead and buried 3 laps ago.
This is where he's got to work hard, though, because the pace just picked up again after he'd only had maybe not a rest, but for 200 metres or so, the pace had slackened for him. And he's got to work hard to try and stay with them here, and then get into the last lap and give himself a chance. Baumann looking very, very strong. Pancorbo still there as well. And Whiteman's going to have to work. Baumann, as we've seen so many times, taking control of the race as they approach the bell.
Well, they come to the bell. Baumann in control. Pancorbo where he might prefer to be, right behind the German, but he's so experienced as Dieter Baumann at the age of 33, still as sharp as ever. Remember last year he set personal best at 1,500, 3,000, 5,000 and 10,000. That European record of his at 5,000, 12.54, shows he has enormous strength. We know he has great speed, and it's building up now down the back straight. Whiteman, with that huge loping stride of his, has pulled himself up alongside Bayard. He's got Baumann and Pancorbo in his sights. Now Baumann lets go. He unleashes that kick of his. Pancorbo in second, struggling to go with it. Head is down. Whiteman still driving hard around the bend. Bayard hanging in there in 4th place, and Whiteman in 3rd, trying to get that inside line now. Glance behind him there, that's bad sign. Whiteman, I think, resigned to 3rd spot now as Baumann takes a little glance over his shoulder, and in that style of his, almost toys with Pancorbo towards the line. He takes it. The time 7:41 there for Dieter Baumann. Pancorbo second. Great points there for Great Britain with Tony Whiteman in 3rd place. Forget about what the times were on paper. As Steve said, we knew he was worth a great deal faster than 7:57, but Tony Whiteman there has just run around 7:44 by my estimation, and that is a huge leap forward for him psychologically and physically. Dieter Baumann coming up trumps for the Germans. They need those points too, because the Russians have been looking surprisingly strong through this first day, Steve, of the individual events. But a nice surprise too there for the British squad, with Tony Whiteman taking 6 points in 3rd.
Great run by Whiteman, but Baumann looked, well, he looked supreme, didn't he? That'll go down as a 7:41.9, and people around the world, they look at it and go, But the nature of the race, with that very fast first mile and then slowing down and then picking it up again over the last 600, shows what sort of shape he's in. Pancorbo pushed him all the way to the line. He's running well. Also, Whiteman